What's up, guys? This is Antoine Robinson. I'm back with another video. I just want to ask the question, why aren't you gardening yet? There's so many people that I talk to that they feel that they continue to kill plants. They have a black thumb. They don't have the time. They don't have the space. But let me tell you, gardening, especially gardening here in America, when we're talking about gardening, we're not talking about farming as most people think about gardening. When you have a farm, you have acres of land and you have rows and rows of a particular type of vegetable. But when you talk about in an urban or suburban context, we're not talking about having rows of vegetables. What we're talking about is using a space like an apartment balcony, or like I do, I use my backyard space, which is about 1/4 of an acre, and I add all these different types of vegetables and flowers into grow bags, raised garden beds, and into my in-ground gardening spaces. It's something easy to do. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. There may be an initial investment, especially if you go with cedar wooden garden beds. But if you do something like I did, I started years ago using grow bags, and these grow bags have been a great investment because I spent $25 for these grow bags, and I've held them for about 5 years now, going on, some of these are going on 6 years that I've had these grow bags. And I don't have to replace the soil year after year. All I do is I get compost and potting soil, and then I amend the garden soil to make sure that it's fertilized and that it has the nutrients that it needs in there, so I'm ready for each successive gardening season. But gardening is just one of those things. It's inexpensive. It's easy to do because all you have to do is either go to the garden center or go and get some seeds or transplants and put them in the ground, and you can watch them grow. When you have a farm, obviously it's a lot more intensive. There's a whole lot more that you have to do. But if you garden properly, the way that you should garden in an urban context, you can really plant things and let them grow. I love these green onions because I've had these green onions for a couple of years, and I really don't have to do anything for these green onions. I just let them grow. I can harvest these green onions, and they just keep growing back and back and back. They grow so much, I can't even use all the green onions that I have. And the same thing goes for all the herbs. I have basil, and I have parsley, and I have oregano. I have all these herbs that they just 1 or 2 plants, they produce so much, I can't even keep up with how much is growing. And these grow bags are so versatile because most of these are 25-gallon grow bags, and I can put, just like in this particular grow bag, I have these green onions, but I also have lettuce and I have radishes in here as well. But I have other grow bags where I have Swiss chard, and I have zucchini, and I have kale. I also have grow bags where I have multiple pepper plants. I've got jalapeno pepper plants. I have some banana pepper plants. I have porcini pepper plants. But I also have tomatoes and cucumbers and peas, and the list goes on and on and on, all in a small urban context because I live on a golf course with a homeowners association, and I can't just grow a farm on my property. And so I love these grow bags because I can plant the vegetables that me and my family eat, but I also have flowers in these because I have zinnias, I have marigolds, I have all these different things that are growing on, some patience and impatience, and all these different flowers that not only do I have the vegetables that I can eat, but I also have the beauty through the flowers that I enjoy. And so it just makes my gardening space not just nearly functional, but it's relaxing because I can come out here and sit and chill and hang out. I can tend the garden, I can see how things are going on, but I also have the beauty of the flowers and the butterflies and the bees and everything else that is going on in my garden. It's super simple to do. Let me tell you, there's always going to be heartache with gardening because you might put a plant in the ground and it may die, but you know what? That's all part of learning how to garden, especially here in the South. We deal with heat and we deal with bugs, and there's just a lot of weather variations that go on. But for the most part, most of my plants, speaking for me personally, most of my plants are really no fuss, no muss, because I can just put some seeds in the ground, or I can go to the garden center and get some transplants, put them in the soil, and they really are just easily growing on, no problem at all. right now in the fall is probably one of the best times to grow, because guess what? It's cooling down, so we don't have the heat problems. A lot of the pests are starting to go away. And so the fall is really one of the best times to start a garden, because there's not some of the pressure that you have, and you can really in what we call this cool season that we're going into. And I know it didn't feel like it's cool right now in the South because it's still 90 degrees, but we're getting into this cool season where there's a lot of different things that we can plant. And for me, a lot of my plants like the carrots and the lettuce and the kales and the peas, a lot of these plants are going to go all winter long. And so I'll be able to harvest off of these lettuces into November, but I already have some plants going on in my garage that I'll plant here in a couple weeks that will take me into January. And so as my early lettuces are going and dying, I'll have more that I will succession plant. And the same thing goes with the peas and some of the other things. I love plants like Swiss chard because Swiss chard will grow all winter long. I can just keep cutting and it will keep growing, and I'll be able to harvest from my Swiss chard plants all winter long. Same thing with the kale. The kale will grow all winter long. The kale, Swiss chard, the green onions, the garlic, they all will take the frost and they will just keep on growing. And so they're just easily no muss, no fuss plants that I really don't have to worry about. Even with the lettuces, they're going to be in the ground, but all I have to do is continue to watch out for pests, which I really haven't seen any. I've seen like a couple spots here and there, but I really haven't seen any issues with any of the lettuce. And so I really think that, these lettuces will just grow. I was worried about it being so hot, but they're doing good. They look good. And so I've got a heat variety of lettuces. It's got 9 different types of lettuces in it. But then I also have some butter crunch lettuce that I have going on. And I have containers and in-ground spaces and raised garden beds all the way throughout my property, so that way I have different environments that have different gardens going on at the same time throughout my property. I'd love to hear about it. If you're struggling with gardening and you're kind of frustrated with the process of having a garden, put it in the comments. I'd love to be able to hear what some of your frustrations are. I'm sure early on I had some of those frustrations, especially when I was new learning how to garden. I'd go to Home Depot and Lowe's and I'd get a transplant and I'd put that transplant in my soil and it would die. And it got frustrating because I'm like, what is going on? Why are my plants dying? I just got them from the store and they look great, but when I put them in my garden, they look horrible. And I had to learn that I can't just go to Home Depot and Lowe's and buy transplants. I think the only thing I really get from Home Depot and Lowe's are herbs, especially some of the perennial herbs that are just hard to kill. But for the most part, I don't go get tomatoes or cucumbers or lettuces or any of those things from the garden store because normally what they're selling at the garden store is not something suitable for my environment. And so I buy packets of seeds, and I can buy a packet of seeds for $2, $3, and those seeds will last me for about 4 years. Now I go to the garden store and I can buy a tomato, but that one tomato plant is going to be $5. Whereas I can buy the seeds and I have 4 years of seeds. And after you kind of get going and you learn how to plant and grow and you get a little bit more advanced in it, you can learn how to save your seeds. That way you don't have to buy seeds year after year. You can just save your seeds if you're planting heirloom varieties, and you can continue to plant year after year after year without even messing with the garden store. The problem also oftentimes with Home Depot and Lowe's and some of these places, they put so many chemicals into their soil, and if you have good soil, that bad soil that's chemical rich, as soon as you put in your good soil, they're not compatible. And so the plants don't survive because your soil doesn't have all those chemicals in it if you do your soil properly. And so what I do is I use the same soil mix with the stuff that I germinate inside. And so that way when I put them in my soil in my grow bags or in my raised beds, that soil, those plants are going to be compatible, and I'll be able to plant them no problem, and they'll grow on and work out fine. The only problem that you have an issue is with the in-ground beds, because they're in-ground beds. I have the native soil that I have to contend with. but I really like to direct sow the majority of the things I plant in ground, so that way they're already starting off in the same environment they're going to grow, and so I don't have to worry about that environmental shock from transplanting things into the in-ground beds. But if you have questions about gardening, I'd love to hear them. I'm going to do a video here next week on what I'm planting here in October. And so I'd love to hear what you're planting in October. But if you're not gardening, I'd highly encourage you to start gardening. Think about what you eat and what you would be able to benefit from. I do a lot of herbs because I like to use a lot of herbs in my cooking. So I have herbs throughout my garden. And if you go to the garden store, or if you go to the grocery store and you see how much herbs are, you can spend $2 for a little 2-ounce thing of parsley. Well, guess what? I've got probably 8 or 9 parsley plants around my property for $1 that I spent in seeds, and those parsley plants are all over the place. And so every time I harvest parsley or basil or oregano or any other herb out of my garden, guess what? I'm saving money because I don't have to go to the grocery store. When you go to the grocery store and you get those packets of parsley or herbs, they last about a day. I go and get these green onions from the store, and it was $1 for 6 green onions, but those green onions lasted in my fridge for about 3 days. Whereas I have all these that are throughout my gardens that I can just come out as I need green onions. I can just chop these, cut them up into my food, and they're fresh. They taste great, and I don't have to worry about them not lasting or wasting away in my fridge because I haven't had a chance to try them out. And you can do this with so many different things, from cucumbers to tomatoes to zucchini to squash to all your leafy greens. There's just so much. The sky's the limit of what you can do and what you can grow in an urban garden. And so if you haven't tried, I highly encourage you to start now. Fall is a great time. If you need help with your garden, hit me up. I'd love to be able to connect with you and see if I can't help you out with your gardening because this is a passion of mine. I enjoy doing it, and I'd love to be able to help you be a better gardener here in the next year as we are going into this cool season, into the spring cool season, and off into the summer for next year. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.